מסכת מגילות דף ט"ו, says the Gemara. תנו רבנן 4 נשים יפהפיות היו בעולם. There were 4 women that were very beautiful. Sarah, Abigail, Rachav, and Esther. Sarah, we all know, Abigail was one of the wives of King David. Rachav was the wife of Yeshua. She was the prostitute who converted and became a big tzaddikus and married Yeshua. And then we have obviously Esther. These were 4 women that were notoriously beautiful. Says the Gemara, there's an opinion in Shas that Esther was green, right? Like the movie Shrek. She was green. So that's obviously not an attractive woman, so who's the 4th? He put in Vashti instead of Esther. Says the Gemara. Anybody who says her name immediately has a taiva to do znus. Just saying her name. Yael, one of the prof also, one of the neviot, bekola, just hearing her voice. Abigail b'schirata, Abigail just remembering her, and Michal bat Shaul b'reiyasa. So each of these 4 women, by doing one of these actions, you will immediately, not you, the person watching, but generally speaking, there becomes a type of znus. Anybody says a word who says Rachav's name twice, immediately will spill sperm. The Gemara says that only nafkamina is when you know her. What does mean know her? As in slept with her, according to the Tosos and Masechet Tainis, that only a man who slept with her and knows her, then when he says her name twice, he spills. Right, and the verse ends by Zak Zaka Gdola Mara. Ask the Gemara, my Omar, what did Mordechai say when he screamed? Haman was much worse than Achashverosh. That's what he screamed. That God Kiviyachol was beaten, his kingship was beaten by the kingship of Achashverosh. Rashi explains that it's a lashon nekiah, but really it's referring to the opposite. That Gova Malko Tata Malko Ilah. Tata means down. All right, next verse. It says in the Megillah, Vatit Chalchal Hamalka. So it says about Esther that her body got messed up. What does that mean? My Vatit Chalchal. Omarav Shepirsa Nido. She became a Nida. She had to go to the bathroom. She was so horrified and scared about the decree that she needed to go to the bathroom. So it's machlokes whether she became a Nida or she had to go to the bathroom. She called Hatach, one of the people that were part of the king. Who's Hatach? This is Daniel, one of the very famous prophets. And why was he called Hatach? Because he was cut from his kingship, from his political power. Before this, he was very politically powerful in times of Belshazzar, Darius, and Korash, and he lost that once Achashverosh. So he lost his power. That's why his name was called Hatach, like cut. Says Shmuel the opposite. That nichtach means like the way of speech, that the kingship follows through Daniel. So one according to Rav, he lost his political power. According to Shmuel, it stayed. So it says about Mordechai, that what? Ladat ma ze ve'al ma ze. So what does this mean? Esther said to Mordechai, she said, Shema Avu Yisrael al Chamish Chumshei Torah. That's why Dichtiv Bohen Mizeh Mizeh Hem Ktuvim. And that's why they lost, that's why the Gezerah of Haman succeeded. Why did the Gezerah of Haman succeed? Because the Jews went against the Torah. So the Gemara, Bagidr Mordechai Divrei Esther. Ve'ilu Ihu Legabei. Why does it say Vayagidu in plural? Why didn't Hatach, which is referring to Daniel, himself go to Mordechai? Why is it that she sent messengers in plural? Why isn't it in singular? Vayaged. Why isn't Daniel himself saying it? Says the Gemara, since Esther sent Daniel to tell Mordechai that she couldn't go to the king because she was going to kill her, she wasn't called. That's why Daniel didn't want to go himself, and he sent other people to do it for him. Because there's halacha that if you're a messenger, and you have bad news, don't say it back to the Adon, send other people. So, what does Esther tell Mordechai? Go and group up with all the Jews. Asher loy kados, What does it mean, Asher Kados? So what is Esther telling Mordechai? What does it mean, Asher Kados? אומר רבבו שלוי קדוש, שבכל ימי עמד עכשיו ואונס, מה עכשיו לרוצוין? כאשר עבדתי, כשם שעבדתי מבית אבא, כך עובד ממך. So basically, Esther here is telling Mordechai, listen, I'm going to have to go to Achashverosh Beratzon for my own free will. Now, once I'm with him, like the Gemara Masechet clearly says, a woman that's an Ashes Ish that sleeps with another man Beratzon, she loses her marriage rights to her actual husband, and they can no longer be together. Now, even though the Shut Maharik brings that this was a mitzvah, it was a mitzvah to go ahead and do this. She was doing a mitzvah for Chal Yisrael. In the halachic geder of Ratzon and Oynes, this is bichlal the geder of Ratzon. She is lemaisa willing to go. She's doing it with free will. She has to do it, but the action is defined as her own will, right? Just in terms of the intercourse itself, she could have not gone. She needs to go for an external reason to see Klal Yisrael. That's external. It's not internal. It's not a part of the actual going to be with the king. That's why in regards to Ishus, it's begeder Ratzon. That's why she lost the chance. She lost her rights to be with her husband. Just like she was an orphan, now she's going to lose her husband. What does it mean by Avon Mordechai? With two pshat. Rav says that what the word Vayavol means is that he changed. He instead of fast, he has fast days, right? Because the declaration was declared on Yud Gimel ben Nisan to kill the Jews. So on Yud Daled ben Nisan, Tet Vav and Tet Zayin, he spent 3 days fasting instead of doing Yom Tov and Chol Moed. So that's the switch. Shmuel says that he passed a river in order to tell the Jews to start fasting. So we see that she got dressed not with clothing, but she got dressed with Ruach HaKodesh. She said Esther had Ruach HaKodesh. ונזכרם בהם אלוהינו, were the two hediotos, David ודניאל, David the Balchi Aravona, sorry. נכתיב במרבונה על המלך. And this was when all the Jews were dying, because David Melech counted the Jews, or Aravona, who was a hediot, he gave David Melech a bracha, and the Jews were saved. The Mateatzel Magifa, as in the plague stopped. So we see that a hediot bracha matters. Second source, Daniel the Balchi Daryovesh, נכתיב אל ההוך, מאנט פורח לי בטרידו, הוא יש זווינוך. So we see that even Daryovesh was a hediot, his bracha saved Daniel. ואמרו לזו מוכננה, אל תקלולס הדיוט קרא בעיניך, בשערי אבימלך קרא לצרה, הנה הוא לחצות עיניים, נזכרם וזרו, ויהי כי זקן לצחוק את ביתכנו עינו. So we see that the curse of a hediot also catches, since Abimelech cursed Sarah that she'd have a kid who was blind, and Yitzchak Avinu was blind. ואמרו לזו מוכננה, בואו ברגע שלא כנד הקדוש ברוך הוא מטבס ודום. Midas bos of Adam Shofek Dera Be'achal Bechmatanat Ochamayim. Shofek Dera means we have a Kedera, which is the pot, and we put it on a kira. So with humans, what we do naturally when we cook is we put the Kedera on the kira, right? Where the boiling, where the fire comes out of the kira. So we put the pot on the kira, and then we pour the water inside to start boiling. But with God, it's the opposite. God first pours the water and then puts the Kedera. What does this mean? So I'm reading inside the Gemara. It says in the verse of Jeremiah, "Lekol titen hamon mayim b'shamayim," and at the end of the verse it says, "Ya'aleh nesim b'ktzei haaretz." Basically, it's referring to water, to rain. The way rain works is God puts the rain in the sky. The clouds come, receive the rain, and then the rain falls. I don't know how this adds up scientifically, but I'm just doing my job and explaining to you guys the Gemara. So we see that God can do the impossible first. As usually you need to have the pot and then the water. Here God can do the water first and then the pot second. Next ma'amad. So we see, since Esther mentioned Mordechai to Achashverosh, the world was saved. Right? Like the megillah says. So we see there's a big mitzvah to when somebody tells you a Dvar Torah, when you're telling somebody the Dvar Torah, state in his name or her name. Haman is complaining that none of anything he has in life, it still wasn't good enough since Mordechai was alive. He hated Mordechai that much. So what does it mean, Eno Shaveli? Amar Lazar, Amar B'chanina V'Shashera Haman Mordechai Yoshev B'Shar HaMelech Amar Kol Ze Eno Shaveli. Ask the Gemara, V'chim Mishum Davar Mordechai Yoshev B'Shar HaMelech Amar Kol Ze Eno Shaveli. So what? What is it? Okay, so you're jealous, but you're so jealous that nothing has any value. Ela כדרב חיסדא דבר חיסדא זה בא בפורס בולי וזה בא בפורס בוטי. What does this mean? פורס בולי, so I'm going to read to you guys Rashi. Rashi says, בולי לשון עושר, כדאמינן ושברתי את גונוזכם, אלו בולאות שביהודה. So buli is rich. Basically, Rav Chizda said that Mordechai was rich and Haman was poor. What is why? Buti says Rashi lashon aniyut, k'mo b'vet amitenu b'meseches gitin. So what happened was there was a story where Mordechai and Haman they were sergeants in middle of war, and story short is that Haman needed food. He was out of food. He was starving. So he comes up to Mordechai and he says to Mordechai, "Hey, can you give me some bread?" And Mordechai said to him, "Oh, if I give you this bread, I want in exchange to buy you as an Eved Knaini. I want to make you my slave." So Haman agreed. So he took the piece of bread that was masechet, and Haman became an Eved Knaini to Mordechai. Guys, what's the halacha of an Eved Knaini? Kol mashikono Eved kono raboy. Whenever the Eved Knaini has whatever possessions the Eved Knaini has, all those possessions pass over to the owner. So that's why Haman said, anything I have isn't really mine as long as Mordechai is alive, because he's my owner. And people used to laugh at Haman and say he was a slave who was bought in with bread. What is it? You could point to it. It's like as if you have a list of all the things he owned. They said all these things have no value since Mordechai is alive and he's the boss. God is going to be like a crown for the tzaddikim. Now, what does it mean that God himself is going to be a crown? It means that God is going to be Mashra Shechina. His Shechina is going to be on the head of the tzaddikim, which is a higher level of hanaga, of godliness, than what we have nowadays. Saw in the Nefesh HaChaim in Shar, I believe Shar Base, if I'm not mistaken, that the Gedra of the Shechina as the Knesset Yisrael is the Chayim Yechida, is all the Neshamas of Am Yisrael together, is the Knesset Yisrael, and that is a very, very high madriga of godliness. So that's what the tzaddikim will receive in Olam Haba. Okay, but obviously we're not talking about God himself, we're talking about the receival of light from God, right? So I want you guys to imagine receiving a very minimal quality of light nowadays, right? And in less level, we're going to receive a much greater light, which is an aspect of God himself, right? Because we know that God's will is to give, and the only way he can give is by giving a part of himself. Sorry, the only way he can give good is by giving a part of himself, because the only thing that is defined as good is God himself. So when God, the version of himself that he's going to give is going to be much greater. So the Gemara the pshat of the Gemara isn't incorrect pshat wise as well. There is himself is given. Just himself, as we define it, is his actions and not his essence, because God's essence is unattainable. Not only is it unattainable, it's an Isser D'Oraisa. The Zohar says in Parshas Bo, it's an Isser D'Oraisa. The Gemara Chagiga also, in Daf Gimel says it's an Isser D'Oraisa to even talk about God, right? You can't ask what was before, what was after, what's up, what's down. Wherever we're talking about God, or we're talking about seeing God or receiving God, we're always talking about his kavod, his honor, his actions. We're never talking about his essence. Okay. So it says in the verse, what does it mean la'teres tzvi? The verse continues on to tzviras tifaro. It says in the Gemara like this. Losim tzivyono. Tzivyono means his will. So these are referring to tzaddikim, because tzaddikim, they do his will, and they and they're always mitzaptifin letifalto. Sorry, mitzapin letifalto. Mitzapin letifalto is always waiting for his Yeshua, for his greatness to reveal. Yahol hakol. Now the Gemara asks, maybe everybody can do this, not just dafka tzadikim. Anybody who can receive this. So the question was, maybe even people that are, let's say, midos-wise, aren't the best, they could still receive this gather of Shechina from God. So the Gemara only for the people that are like shirayim, like the anas, people who are humble, they receive it. But the people that are arrogant do not receive it. We see this everywhere over Shas. And in Kabbalah, we see this idea where somebody has to be humble in order to receive the good from God. You can't just do the mitzvahs. You have to be humble as well. Humble is a key condition to receive. Uleruach mishpat. So the next verse says, Uleruach mishpat. What does it mean, Uleruach mishpat? We're talking about the qualities of a human being in order to receive God as your crown, like we initially explained. The Shekhinah itself, you have to have all these qualities. What is Uleruach mishpat? Says the Gemara, somebody who breaks their Yetzirah and does tshuva. What does mishpat? What does it mean? Mishpat is adam din emes la'amita. Somebody who does all the halachas in the truth, doesn't fake, not a faker, a guy who does it for real. Ulegvura. What does gvura mean? That means a guy who breaks his Sahara and doesn't do averas. I don't know the difference between what we said earlier. We said earlier, Ruach mishpat means to break the Sahara. So I don't know. I don't have a pshat there. What's the difference? Maybe you guys do. Tell me in the comments if you guys have a pshat. What's the difference? Mishivim milchama. What does it mean, Mishvim milchama? Elu. These are the Talmid Chachams shenos'in v'notim b'milchat b'shetayim. People. These are warriors. People. It's combat. It's combat with the Sahara. These are Talmid Chachams. Sha'ara. What do you mean Sha'ara? Elu Talmid Chacham shemashkinim u'ba'arivim b'beit knesses v'otam midrashos. That they're in the sha'ar of they're always the first and last to enter the knesses, shuls and synagogues and beis medrashos. What is the difference between tzaddikim that have these qualities versus tzaddikim that don't have these qualities? Dafka. Says the Gemara that God says to Midas Adin, the Tachlis, these tzaddikim, they're like Rishayim. Even though they do my will, since they don't have these qualities, this personality to them, even though they do mitzvahs, they're like Rishayim. Right? And so what happens to them? What happens to Rishayim? Paku pliliya. What does it mean Paku pliliya? Says the Gemara, In Paku le'baganam shemar ve'lo yisiyah zois lechol le'puka. And Puka is referenced there to Gehenna. Then pliliya ela dayan shemar lasam b'flilim. So we see that they're going to be judged in Gehenna. It says that Esther stood where once she reached the place of the Benazar, he started on Shechina. Amra, Eli, lama zartani. Why did you leave me, God? Why did you leave me? If the reason you left me is because I'm going to be with the king, I'm doing this be'ones, I'm forced into this. So I have to do this. Says the Gemara, or maybe there's separate. Maybe so she saw that wasn't the reason. So now she had a new idea. Maybe Oshema ashikabati kelev. Shenamar ratzina mechem shimiyat kelev yechidati. So since she called Achashverosh a dog, it was disrespectful to Kvod Malchus. There's such an idea. I still don't really understand this idea. I've seen it many times in Shas. I don't understand. But the idea is that there's something called Kvod Malchus. There's like the honor of the kingship. You have to respect the king, even if the king's a Russia. Since he's in a political position of power, you need to respect him. I think Gemara Pesach Brachos in chapter 3 says that you have to run to the burials of Goyim, Malchi Akum, Kal Chomer for Jews. Maybe that's the svar. Maybe I just answered the question that if you honor a Goy king, a Russia, Kal Chomer, you'll honor a tzaddik king. Maybe that's the answer. Let me just answer myself. Nevertheless, there's an idea that you have to honor kings that are from Goyim. So she called him by calling him a dog. God took away his Shechina from Esther. That's why Esther recalled him a lion. That way, the Shechina would come back. אמר בכם שלוש מלאכי שלוש נזדמנו לו, בו יסושו, אחד שהקביע את צווארה ואחד שמשך חוץ וחסד עליה, ואחד שמתחת את השרביט. So the Gemara is saying that when she came to visit Achashverosh, remember she wasn't supposed to, she wasn't called, so she was supposed to be Chayv Misa. So he was sitting at a high position, he was down here, so how did he see her immediately? Says the Gemara, three things. A, her neck elevated all the way up to his face so he could see her. B, the second angel made her have chesed. And C, his wand, his shavabit is a wand, it extended all the way to her so that she could kiss it. Ask the Gemara, how big did the wand get? So there are many opinions, guys. Follow inside. Also her hand extended, Basparo's hand extended famously to reach Moshe Rabbeinu. Yes, this is a famous Gemara Masechet Brachos in chapter 9, where Og Melech HaBashan wanted to kill the Jews, and look at the Rashi. The Rashi gives you the whole story. Basically, his teeth extended, and his teeth killed himself in the stone. No, it destroyed the stone, so he couldn't throw the stone at the Jews. Look at the Rashi. The Rashi brings the whole Gemara. The Rashi over there in Masechet Brachos says that this story is not literal, by the way. It's metaphoric. רבי בר עופרא אמר בשמו רב אלעזר ששמע מרבו 200, so it's 200 almost the length of the wand. Whatever it was a miracle. ואמר לו המלך, מה לא חסר מלכה, מה בגלל שזה חצי מלכוס בתעש? חצי מלכוס זה לא כל מלכוס. לא ידעו שחצי מלכוס ומענינו בניין בית המקדש, that she asked from him, she wanted, the Achashverosh said to Esther, I will give you my whole base, I'll give you everything you want outside of the Beis HaMikdash. She wanted Haman to join in the Seuda, like we know from the megillah itself. Yes. What was her intention? The Gemara is going to give us right now 12 different reasons why she did this. 12. We're going to start with the Brisa. So we see from the verse that when somebody eats, they're going to make mistakes. So she wanted to bring him in front of Achashverosh to make mistakes. So we learn from the verse that it's a good, if you want to beat your enemy, we learn from the verse that it's good to feed them bread. So that's what she did. Third reason, she was worried that he was going to be, since Rashi says, since he was having success, she was worried that Haman was going to be able to beat Achashverosh. So she wanted Haman in front of Achashverosh, then she could tell Achashverosh in front of Haman all of bad things that Haman was doing, and then Achashverosh could kill Haman on the spot. Not that Haman would be not in front of Achashverosh in that time. Okay? So this is a good way to disguise her being Jewish since she's teaming up with Haman. So this was that way the Jews would daven harder, that way they wouldn't trust Esther, because now they don't trust her, she's hanging out with Haman. She wanted Haman in front of Achashverosh as much as possible, that way Achashverosh could catch Haman doing a mistake. Maybe God will have mercy. Why? Since I have to be nice, since she has to be nice to this Russia. She did it that way. They would both be killed, both her and Haman, since the king would get jealous. Achashverosh was a king that was very emotional. He wasn't stable, so Esther was worried that maybe, even if this is very interesting, guys, even if Esther could convince Achashverosh into killing Haman, maybe Achashverosh would go back on the decree. So she wanted Haman literally in front of him, that way the decree could happen on the spot. The reason why she invited Haman was that way the king would get jealous of Haman and the fact that Esther liked Haman, and also the Sadim, the politicians would get jealous by Haman, and this is how they would find a reason to kill him. Alright, now the Amoraim, until we talk about Tanas, now the Amoras say, what does we see here? She wanted, the verse says that anybody who was a Balgaiva in the end breaks. So she wanted to make him a Balgaiva, that way he could break in the end. Haman. Abai v'amar gam tarabayu bechumam ashit et mishtehem. So we see that Rishaim in the verse talking about Daryavish, I believe, Belshazzar, that he drank a lot and that's how he died. We see that Rishaim, they get killed. There's a hananga that they die when they're drunk. So that's why she invited into the feast. Ashkechi Rabbi Baravur Eliyahu. Rabbi Baravur asked Eliyahu Navi. He met Eliyahu Navi. He said to Eliyahu Navi, listen, Tachlis, you know everything. Give me the truth. What really happened? There's 12 different reasons, right? Which one of the 12 is the real one? Everything that was said here, everything happened. All the 12 reasons were all the reasons of Esther. Very cool, right? So all the 12 reasons that were said here, these were all the reasons why Esther invited Haman. מספר להם המן את כבוד השור ורוב בניו. אז כבר, וכמה רוב בניו? How much is רוב בניו? How many kids did Haman have? So we have a few opinions. אמר רב 30. עשרו מסף עשרו נתלו, ועשרו המחזר על הפסוחים. אבל נאמרי, אוי זמן שמחזר על הפסוחים 70 הביא לכסיב, שבעים אליכם לשכבו, עד יקרא שבעים אלו 70. So the Machalgash father, he had 10 sons who stayed poor, or 70 sons who stayed poor. What's the gematria of רוב בניו? It's 208. As a gemara, that's not true. So we have 208. All right, we just finished Masechet Megillah Daf Yod Daf.